How did you guys feel about Peter Thiel's quote at the Bitcoin conference yesterday, where he said that Warren Buffett is a sociopathic grandfather who is the number one enemy or like number 5 enemy to Bitcoin? Personally, I thought it was laughable. I love Peter Thiel, but I thought this was a little ridiculous what he was saying. I think it's fair to criticize him at that level. I get he's a libertarian, but it was a very kind of like there was hundreds of thousands of people, or at least like tens of thousands of people in that crowd, and he put up a screen with Warren Buffett, and he framed him as the enemy. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like, are you mobilizing these thousands of people to like follow this cult of herding? Like, it was really very weird to me. It was not a good look, in my opinion, for Thiel, just taking this ad hominem attack. But how did you guys feel about it?
Yeah, I think should I go ahead? I think that that the demonization of like these old investors, right, is ridiculous. I mean, the amount of experience that they have should not be trivialized at all. And I agree. He sometimes goes on these like random kind of rants that are very like aggressive and sometimes look kind of very close-minded, I guess you could say, which is strange. I disagree with him. And I think like I'm against like BTC, to be honest. I'm interested in the whole Bitcoin space, but BTC, I think there's some.
You don't think crypto is innovative, right, Darton?
No, I do think crypto is innovative, just not BTC, not
Okay.
the kind of religion that it's turned into. So he definitely does go on these random rampages, but I mean, yeah, you can't demonize these OG investors in which have shown their track record, especially in their younger years. I think it was something crazy to do, to be honest.
Chris?
I thought this was a masterstroke in marketing. Okay. If you are trying to get a message and you want the message to go as wide and as far as possible,
You got to be aggressive.
you got to be aggressive, and you got to target the person who is the living embodiment of what you are trying to disrupt, right? Warren Buffett is old money. Warren Buffett is old investing style. Or Warren Buffett pretty much epitomizes what investing is to hedge funds and all these big guys. I'll tell you right now, I am not agreeing with him on certain verbiage, but at the same time, Warren Buffett, everyone thinks is like this warm, cuddly old man who's, like he shows up to Dairy Queen and Coca-Cola. But this is the same business operator who'll cut your throat open during a time when you're stressed. And guess what? He'll ask for huge asks from you because at the end of the day, he's a very shrewd investor. I'll give you an example. In 2008, when the whole financial crisis was going on and, some of the banks turned to Warren Buffett, Buffett wasn't like warm and cuddly, like, yeah, I'm going to save the economy. I'll help you. Here's a few $1 billion, Goldman Sachs. It was, I'm going to loan shark you. And that's what Warren Buffett is. Warren Buffett is the biggest professional loan shark that's out there. And he utilizes his notoriety, his power to pretty much almost like gain this, how do I say this? To gain this leverage over certain companies in order to be profitable, right? Now, why do I think Peter Thiel went after him? Well, like I said, he epitomizes the old world thinking, right? If you're trying to disrupt, you gotta target the biggest whale out there. If right now Peter Thiel said, I think some small investor is not smart by investing in Coca-Cola, no one would have even batted an eye. But bro, you went after the Oracle of Omaha. And to have that level of conviction that Peter Thiel does is actually kind of refreshing to see. And here's the part that you have to give Peter Thiel a little bit credit for. He speaks his mind, right?
He's a contrarian. He doesn't care.
He's a contrarian, yeah. But he speaks his mind. And I think there is a certain subset of the population and even some subset of the retail and investing community that like that kind of talk, that kind of want to follow that along. Because if you think about it, the opposite side has been bashing Bitcoin since day one, right? You know how many people have been saying, oh, Bitcoin is worthless. Bitcoin is nothing. Bitcoin is like vaporware, right? Everyone has been saying that. So this is just Peter Thiel fighting back, right? These are all the big ones finally taking a stand and saying, we're not wrong. You're goddamn wrong. And the fact that we have someone like Peter Thiel, who's a goddamn billionaire on the side of Bitcoin, actually makes me want to buy some Bitcoin.
Can I say something? I'm concerned. Like I've gone down many rabbit holes with this BTC space, I owned some in the past, right? But I'm no longer in BTC. I just think these guys have such a huge incentive to kind of
You think they're
mislead.
pumping?
I think that I don't think Peter is, but I think there are. I call them BTC core, basically the core developers behind the original fork of the Bitcoin consensus protocol. There's a huge incentive to spread misinformation and mislead a crowd of individuals who I believe are vulnerable to investing in BTC. Like you said, Chris, like people would hear the billionaire Peter Thiel wants to buy more Bitcoin, and they instantaneously buy this stuff. It's like, have you actually looked into this in detail? I question it, but I think yeah, Chris is a good point in terms of marketing. I just question the incentive. Maybe I guess that's the correct way of putting it.
Dom, your thoughts on Thiel's quote?
Yeah, I'm like in between. I'd prefer more the humility route. Just my take. But to Chris's point, when you're a multi-billionaire, you probably don't have a lot of humility, and you don't care what people think, and you'll do whatever you want, and that's how you've lived your life for quite some time now. And it was probably very effective marketing. We're talking about it right now, so it was effective. Do I agree with it? Does it get me excited about BTC? No. Do I believe that blockchain technology and crypto will play I won't even say critical, but will be important in our future? Yeah. Do I care to wager and when that's going to really come mainstream and invest in that? Not my cup of tea. I would rather invest in a couple of companies like Coinbase and Square that a little more reliable. I know that I can value their company and know that they have big incentives either way. Or Silverbank Trust, Silvergate, where they're a bank, but yet they also are the biggest funding, turning crypto into US dollars. But yeah, Peter, I don't know. He's just going to do what he's going to do, right? Like those kind of guys are going to do that. I don't think it was maybe the best route to go, but he got what he wanted. People are talking about.
Sean in the chat says genius and eccentricity often travel together. I agree with that. And Chris, I think you bring up a phenomenal point that goes to Sean's comment, which is like, you gotta be radical and say something, even if it's going to turn some people off, to get people to listen. And that's what matters. Emmanuel, thank you for the super chat. You said, Christian, if we can't trust Thiel about Bitcoin, should we doubt him about Palantir? Which leads me to another question.
Sure.
Why doesn't Palantir have Bitcoin on the balance sheet if the co-founder is saying that like Bitcoin is basically, the almighty savior from the government? Like why hasn't he influenced the company to put it on the balance? Why do they have gold instead?
Yeah, I mean, gold is I question. I mean, maybe Thiel is obviously a big advocate of BTC, and perhaps like ideologically deep down, he really does agree with the values of BTC, etc., and believes that the Lightning Network will scale and therefore Bitcoin will rise in price. But I question whether maybe Alex doesn't, and the rest of kind of the team were more skeptical. They did speak about this though months ago. I think it must have been last year that there was some speculation over adding.
They said it was too volatile, I believe, right?
Did they say that?
Yeah, they said it was too. They would rather be prepared for a gold swan event with the 50 million in gold. They knew what they were getting and knew what they had in storage, but yet they know that there's a lot of people trying to push this space, and so they have Foundry for crypto. They saw a problem that they're going to end up being.
But it's confusing because if Palantir is supposed to be the innovative company, like Tesla bought Bitcoin, right? Tesla's like, let's go.
They don't have to be involved in every single thing that's quote unquote innovative. I mean,
I agree, but if the co-founder is over here saying it's the next best thing,
that's where you got to really do your research on. Thiel doesn't make all the calls, right? Like Karp and Thiel are definitely they're buds, but there's some things they don't see eye to eye on. And so it'd be interesting to see what that dynamic is. And that's something we'll never know is how do decisions get made at Palantir? That would be a really interesting thing to know,
One of the things that I noticed is especially when I look at a lot of the interviews on some of the forums and everything else with Palantir employees, they lean pretty heavily to the other side. There's not a very big libertarian presence at Palantir. Majority of the people there follow Alex Karp and Alex Karp's way of thinking. Now, yes, Peter Thiel is a co-founder, but his operational guidance is not necessarily 100% there. And there's one very case point that I can just say right now, and you guys are like, yeah, I never thought of that. And it's how they do sales. If you look at 0 to 1, it says clearly, when you're doing sales, you need people that are experts in sales, and you need to have people that are dedicated to selling. Palantir for 17 years did not do that. If Thiel was really running the organization, that would have been built in from day one. It wasn't. So it just goes to show you that Peter Thiel has his name on the door somewhere at Palantir, but has no real operational ability to make any moves. He's on the board at Palantir, which means that he can lend guidance. But at the end of the day, Karp is who's running the company. And I think right now, some of the newer stuff that we're seeing, that's Peter Thiel's influence starting to kind of come in. But I think for the last 17 years, not 17, but maybe for the last 10 years, Peter Thiel had very little to do with Palantir. Very little. You know, just because, like I said, I think the company's culture and values and everything, there's probably some of the messaging that Peter Thiel probably helped craft, but I don't necessarily think that Peter Thiel is so involved in Palantir. And I hate to say this, but I wish Peter Thiel wasn't necessarily 100% involved in Palantir right now, or at least that, you know, there was a way that the company could kind of project that out, that message to say, look, you guys all hate Peter Thiel, thus you hate Palantir. Because even if you saw, like, Jay posted a video earlier today, Jay Palantrillion, about, you know, a civil liberties and privacy person talking about Palantir, and the person on the opposite side of that literally did nothing but attack Peter Thiel, and then thus, because of Peter Thiel, attacked Palantir, right? And said that, oh, they're just spying and everything else. How much of all of the negative press and negative comments are coming because of Peter Thiel's affiliations with actors on the other side of things?
That's why he left Facebook, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, before he had to step down and really kind of keep it quiet with his interactions with Trump, right? Like, they were catching a lot of heat because, you know, he funded a good, or at least contributed a portion to the Trump administration. And so that created additional conflict.